Hey guys, Christian from Shasta Films back here again with another product review today. And before we get into that, be sure to check out all links in the description for all of our other product reviews, our movie reviews, and our short films. And while you're at it, also hit like and subscribe and click the bell notification so you can stay updated with all of our future content, as well as actually encouraging us to do more future content. So anyways, today we're going to be reviewing the Canon Rebel T5i. And this is the DSLR actually I'm shooting on right now. It's a fairly decent camera. But first, I'm just going to kind of go through the specs to you guys really quick. So, right off the bat, video only shoots at 30, 25, and 24 FPS built into the camera at 1080p maximum. Photo can do 4K, and it can also shoot RAW, but video actually cannot shoot RAW, which I was kind of surprised by that, but at the same time, not entirely. So, if you're looking for a photography camera right off the bat, that's already a good sign for you guys. So anyways, this camera also is a crop sensor camera, which means it's about 1.6 times the actual focal length that you're getting on the lens. So if you were using like a 50mm lens, you'd be looking closer to about 75-ish millimeters. So there's kind of some differences there, so kind of keep that in mind. Like right now I'm using an 18 to 55mm. I'm probably about 20mm on the lens, but that would adjust to roughly 32 millimeters or something like that. So just kind of keep an eye on stuff like that. This camera also has 18 megapixels, a rotating LCD screen, which I love, an eyepiece so that you can look through. The kit lens is typically an 18 to 55 millimeter, 3.5 to 5.6 aperture, and then image stabilization, at least with this camera anyways. And for the body and lens together, from what I've found so far, it's about $600 for the kit together. I got mine for $680 or something like that, but it came with a bunch of other accessories as well. And I think even a small camera case, I'd have to check again. I've changed so many cases, it's not even funny. So this camera also has an EF or an EFS lens mount for Canon lenses. There's also a few third-party lenses that also will fit this. I think Sigma's a pretty popular one for outside lenses that will fit Canon cameras, especially the T5i. Native ISO on this camera runs from 100 minimum to 25,600 maximum boosted. The camera also has several video and photo modes. So I'm gonna, since this isn't really a scientific review, I'm gonna kind of go over the aspects of this camera that I feel are not so great about it. So let's go ahead and jump into that since I gave you just the official camera specs. Earlier, grain when you're using ISO becomes noticeable around 800 ISO. But it really gets bad at 1600 and up. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Like right now I'm shooting at 800. You probably can't see too much grain unless you look at areas like right back here or maybe a little bit down here because I have the area well lit. But if you're shooting at low light, this camera is going to struggle. And Canon is not very well known for their built-in audio. The built-in audio on this camera is actually not very good. In fact, I'll switch over to it right here. So this is the onboard audio of the Canon camera. I have no mics plugged in. My shotgun mic is actually right up here. So we'll switch back to that really quick, just so you guys don't have to suffer with the bad Canon quality with microphones anyways. And it doesn't get much better when a microphone is actually plugged into it. I've noticed there's still more static. So I'm using my Zoom H1 audio recorder actually to record this, and that takes out most of the static within the microphone. It makes it sound that much better. I just don't trust plugging my microphone into my Canon. The only time I will really do that is when I'm vlogging on Chris Vlogs because, well, audio quality doesn't matter as much when I'm doing stuff like this and I actually have a proper setup. It's a little bit easier to do. I can get better quality out of it. But when I'm just run and go vlogging, then just mounting a shotgun mic on top. In fact, here, I'm actually using the Rode video mic. So I just mount that on top of my Canon camera and go. And that works just fine. Like, that's for a vlog, that's decent enough quality because it's just a run and go. But when I'm doing sit-down stuff like this or even short films, I use my Zoom H1. So anyways, even when the screen is at maximum brightness, the LCD is really hard to see in daylight. So that's why right now I'm actually using a field monitor right now by Newer, and I have to use that outdoors. It comes with a little sunscreen and everything so that I can actually see properly when I'm out in daylight. Because that, like I said, that LCD is so hard to see, even when you have it set to maximum brightness and you're like cupping your hands over it. It's so difficult to see, and it's so tiny too, so it makes it hard for your crew to see. So if you're working by yourself, it's a little bit easier. And if you're not working outside, that's definitely a lot easier. In fact, for a while, I was working with just flipping the LCD out on this camera and using it like it is right now, just with the LCD flipped out. But with a monitor, it's so much easier because I can actually see so much more and I can see details that much better. So I would definitely recommend getting a monitor if you plan on using this camera. It's definitely got its serious advantages. And I know this is going to sound odd for a con, but the fact that this camera is lightweight kind of sucks. Because when you're trying to do handheld shots, it's going to be more shaky. It's going to be a little bit shakier. It's going to have more of that micro jitter there when you're going handheld, because it's not as heavy, so you can't like hold it as steady. Because usually the heavier an object is, the steadier you're going to be able to grip it. But since this camera is so lightweight and it only has like one grip over here on the side, you have to kind of do it like this. It doesn't come out that well. So handheld, it kind of sucks. It thankfully comes with a neck strap to compensate for that, but still it's hard just going like this with this camera and having it be so small. You get so much more jitter in there, and there's no built-in body stabilization either, so that also adds to some difficulty there. Now, I haven't had as much problems with this next part as I had, or recently, as I have before, but in the past, I did have some issues with my T5i overheating about 15 minutes of recording. That's the other thing too, is that sometimes recording will just suddenly stop if you let it go on for too long. So this camera is a little bit harder to do time lapses with, and it's kind of frustrating to me a little bit. And I don't know why it happens, but because I also use this camera for events too. Thankfully, I'm actually manning the camera the whole time and watching it so I can see when it stops recording and whatnot. But I do run into those issues every now and then when it'll overheat and then just kind of malfunction, and then I have to actually pull out the battery and put it back in to get it to work. And then there's other cases when it just automatically stops recording for no reason, and I haven't been able to figure out why. I'll have to go through my camera settings a little bit more maybe and see what's up there. But yeah, like I said, the camera just runs into problems if it starts to overheat. So definitely keep an eye out for that on warm days and stuff like that. It works a lot better in the cold, actually, because it doesn't overheat as quickly, obviously. And like I mentioned just a minute ago, there's no built-in stabilization with this camera in the body, which does make for some trouble. So if you throw on a lens that doesn't have image stabilization, like the one I have on right now does have image stabilization, but if I were to throw on my 50mm prime lens, that has no image stabilization, and it would struggle if I were trying to do handheld. Even just photography would have some problems. So little things like that kind of bug me a little bit, because they added it in. I can't remember if it was the T6i, but I know the T7i for sure has a built-in stabilization, and I did actually get to mess around with one. And the autofocus in this camera is actually quite slow and sometimes not reliable. Right now it'll work fine because I'm just sitting still, but if you're run and go on the move, then the autofocus is going to take its time. It doesn't adjust very quickly. Sometimes it kind of overcompensates in one direction and then has to go back, and it just takes that extra second or two, and it really bothers me. So if I'm out on a shoot and I don't have time to sit there and focus, or I'm on the move and I can't sit there focusing as I'm moving because I need to keep a steady shot, that autofocus is not reliable to fall back on. So that does cause a lot of problems for me. Most of the time I end up just having to use the stabilizer, so that'll kind of help with that autofocus a little bit. But even then, it's still a real long push that the focus just cannot keep up with. So that's all I really have for the negative parts of this camera. I know that's probably quite a bit. But anyways, let's go ahead and move on to the good parts of this. So it's obviously a good beginner quality camera. As you can see, I'm using it here right now, and it looks okay. It's doing a pretty good job, decent video. And it's keeping track of my face. Well, it actually has pretty good facial recognition, I will admit, when it comes to autofocus. You get 4K photo, which is awesome. You can shoot in RAW, even better. Only for photo, though. When it comes to video, this camera is quite lacking. But then again, this is a DSLR. This is more intended for photography than it is for video. But this is still a pretty good camera for photography. I will definitely lend it that. The color profiles in the camera are alright. They're not like the greatest that I've seen, but they do get the job done, and they do leave plenty of room for editing later on if you choose to edit your photos or your video in terms of color grading. It's a pretty simple to use camera. It's just you can pretty much get it and go if you use the automatic settings, or you can take the time to learn the manual settings. That's always a plus too. They're pretty simple and actually quick to learn. It took me about a week maybe to learn everything that I needed to know. And the flip LCD screen is such a necessity for people like me, other video creators or content creators that need to be able to see themselves while shooting, or sometimes, you know, they just need to be in front of the camera and to be able to see what they're shooting. Like if they, you know, need to flip the LCD out, or maybe your camera's down low and you need to flip the LCD up so you can look down and see it rather than having to crouch to be eye level with the LCD. So being able to have that rotating LCD is so nice. Having interchangeable lenses is also a huge bonus, so I can swap out right now if I wanted to my 18 to 55mm from just my 55mm prime. And the fact that this camera has autofocus is awesome. I know I listed it as a con earlier, but that's just because it's slow and sometimes unreliable. But just the fact that it even has autofocus is a huge plus, because that way, you know, if you are running gun shooting, you're not able to sit there and focus the whole time, or you don't have a follow focus, then having autofocus is a huge bonus. So I love the fact that there is built-in autofocus. That's something I would have not even considered. If the camera didn't have autofocus, I wouldn't have even considered getting it, to be completely honest. And lastly, this camera is cheap and affordable for budget filmmakers and budget video makers like myself, because once again, the body and the lens together is only about $600, $700-ish if you're going for a full bundle with all of the accessories. So realistically, this is actually a very cheap budget camera in consideration with all the other cameras out there. Like a 1D Mark IV, I believe, was like $6,000, and that's not even a new camera. So there are a lot more expensive cameras out there than this. This is great if you're just starting out or just doing home video, because some of those lower end, like 400 and lower price range, can be pretty low quality. So if you're looking for something decent, this is definitely the way to go. And if you actually watch my short films, you'll notice that they're all fairly decent quality, and they were actually all shot on this one, with the exception of Priceless and Frozen in Place. So overall, this camera is actually pretty decent. Once again, if you're a beginner budget filmmaker or video creator, then this is probably the camera for you. Or if you want to chip in a couple $100 more, maybe like just 100, I don't remember the exact price on it, go with the T7i, because the upgrades in it are tremendous. I might do a review on that later, actually. But the T7i is still not completely new, but not completely old either, and it's got so many upgraded features compared to the T5i that, once again, are outstanding. And like a lot of the cons that I listed on here on this product review, most of them were actually fixed fairly well in the T7i. So take a look into that if you can, or if you just want a cheap budget one that you think fits your needs and still does pretty decent, T5i is definitely a good option. So anyways, guys, that's all I got for you today. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll see you all in the next video, whatever that is. Peace out.